The lecture hall fell silent as Tavren walked to the front. His 3 eyes scanned the rows of young Caltherian cadets, their purple skin still bright with youth, unmarked by the scars of real combat. They looked at him with curiosity and respect. After all, he was a decorated veteran of the Terran integration wars. He had fought beside humans and lived to tell about it. Instructor Velmoth has asked me to speak about my experiences with humans, Tavren began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. I will tell you the truth, even though some of it still gives me nightmares. A few cadets shifted uncomfortably. Tavren noticed but continued anyway. 15 years ago, I was a soldier just like you. Confident, well-trained. I had fought in 3 campaigns against the Vrix Raiders and earned my honors. When Command told us about a new species called humans, we laughed. He paused, remembering that day clearly. We actually laughed. The memory pulled him back through time. Tavren could see himself standing in the briefing room aboard the warship Calvarian Dawn. His unit commander had displayed a hologram of a human for the first time. The creature stood upright on 2 legs, with pale skin completely exposed to the elements. No natural armor plating. No combat claws. No chemical weapons or venomous glands. Look at this, his squad leader had said, pointing at the hologram. Their bone density is pathetic. Their reaction time is slow. They have only 2 eyes and cannot see ultraviolet or infrared. They cannot even regenerate lost limbs. The squad had chuckled at this. What kind of warrior species could not regrow an arm? The briefing officer had continued listing human weaknesses. Their sense of smell was terrible. Their hearing was limited. They had no natural weapons whatsoever. They could not even survive in most of the galaxy's standard atmospheric conditions without assistance. The report concluded that humans posed minimal threat and could be easily integrated into the Caltherian sphere of influence through diplomacy. We were assigned a simple mission, Tavren told the cadets. Escort a diplomatic team to a human colony world, show the flag, make friends. Easy work. He clicked his mandibles together in what might have been a bitter laugh. I wish someone had warned us. The journey to the human colony took 6 days. On the 2nd day, a human liaison officer came aboard their ship. His name was Corporal Day 1, and he was assigned to help them understand human customs and culture. Tavren remembered seeing him for the first time in the docking bay. Day 1 was smaller than most Caltherians, standing only about 2 meters tall. He wore a simple uniform with no visible armor. His face was smooth and expressive, with dark hair cut short against his skull. He smiled when he greeted them, showing his flat teeth. Nothing about him seemed dangerous, but his eyes bothered Tavren. They were dark and intelligent, constantly moving, constantly watching. They reminded Tavren of the eyes of a Koresh predator from his homeworld, the kind of predator that watched prey for hours before striking. He tried to dismiss the feeling as paranoia. Day 1 was friendly and polite. He answered all their questions about human society, their governments, their customs. He explained that humans came from a planet called Earth, which was classified as a death world by galactic standards. The cadets in the lecture hall stirred at this. Death worlds were rare and produced notoriously tough species. What makes it a death world? One of Tavren's squad mates had asked. The gravity is higher than most planets, Day 1 had explained calmly. The weather is unpredictable and often violent. The native life forms are competitive and dangerous. Humans evolved fighting for survival every single day. He had said this casually, as if it meant nothing. During the journey, Tavren watched Day 1 carefully. The human moved with an economy of motion that spoke of training. He was always aware of his surroundings. Once, when a maintenance panel suddenly burst open with a loud bang, every Caltherian in the corridor had jumped in surprise. Day 1 had not moved at all. His hand had simply dropped to where a weapon would be, and his body had shifted into a ready stance. All of this happened in less than a second. Then he had relaxed and smiled, as if nothing had happened. "You seem very calm," Tavren had commented. "Old habits," Day One had replied. "I served in the Korean Defense Forces before joining the colonial service. We trained to be ready for anything." The way he said it suggested there was much more to that story. The Caltharian ship finally arrived at New Busan, a human colony world on the border of explored space. As they descended through the atmosphere, Tavren looked out at the planet below. It was green and blue, covered in water and vegetation. It looked peaceful and welcoming. The landing pad was busy with activity. Humans moved back and forth, loading supplies, repairing vehicles, conducting drills. They moved with purpose and efficiency. Tavren noticed that many of them had scars visible on their exposed skin. Some were missing fingers or had damaged ears. They bore these injuries without shame, displaying them openly. A human officer approached to greet them. She was female, with her hair tied back severely from her face. She introduced herself as Lieutenant Sora, the commander of the security platoon assigned to the outpost. Her handshake was firm and strong, stronger than Tavren had expected from such a small creature. "Welcome to New Busan," Sora said with a professional smile. "We are honored to host the Caltharian delegation. Corporal Day One will show you to your quarters. We have prepared a dinner for tonight where you can meet our colonial administrator." As she spoke, Tavren noticed a young human working nearby. The medic, introduced as Private Jae-min, was treating another soldier's injury. The wounded soldier had a deep cut across his arm that was bleeding heavily. Jae-min worked quickly and efficiently. But what struck Tavren was that the injured soldier did not cry out or even flinch. He simply sat there, talking and joking with his companions while his flesh was cleaned and sealed. That night, lying in his assigned quarters, Tavren found himself unable to sleep. Something about the humans disturbed him on a level he could not quite identify. They seemed friendly enough, but underneath that friendliness was something else. Something patient and watchful and very, very old. He did not know then that within 3 days he would understand exactly what that something was. He did not know that he would witness something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He did not know that his entire understanding of warfare was about to be shattered. All he knew was that the humans made him nervous, and he could not explain why. The morning sun rose hot and bright over New Busan. Tavren and his squad were given a tour of the human outpost by Corporal Day One. The base was smaller than Caltharian military installations, but it was well organized and efficiently designed. Everything had a purpose. Nothing was wasted. "We will observe your training exercises today," Tavren's squad leader announced. "Standard protocol when establishing military cooperation." Lieutenant Sora nodded her approval. "Of course. We were planning live fire drills this morning anyway. You are welcome to watch." The training ground was a flat area outside the main base, marked with obstacles and target ranges. About 30 human soldiers assembled there, including the young medic, Jae-min. They wore light armor and carried their weapons with practiced ease. Sora gave brief instructions, and the exercise began. What Tavren witnessed over the next several hours changed his perspective forever. The humans ran obstacle courses in the brutal heat. They climbed walls, crawled through mud, carried heavy equipment across long distances. A Caltharian soldier would have needed rest breaks every hour or so. The humans kept going, and going, and going. "How long have they been training?" Tavren asked Day-One. After 6 hours had passed. "Since dawn," Day-One replied, checking his time device. "They started at 0500 hours. We will break for a meal in another hour, then continue with tactical drills." "Continue?" Tavren could not hide his surprise. "For how much longer?" "Until 1800 hours. Standard training day." Day-One said this as if it was completely normal. 12 to 14 hours is typical, sometimes longer if we are preparing for deployment. Tavren watched Private Jae-min complete another obstacle run. The young human was breathing hard and covered in sweat, but he immediately got in line to run it again. There was no complaining. No one asked to stop. They simply kept going because that was what was expected of them. During the meal break, Tavrin approached Jaemin. "Sure," Jaemin said, eating his rations quickly. "How can you train for so many hours without rest?" "Caltherian soldiers require recovery periods. Our bodies demand it." Jaemin smiled. "Humans are persistence hunters. Back on Earth, our ancestors would chase prey animals for hours and hours, sometimes days. The animal would be faster, but we would just keep following it. Eventually, it would collapse from exhaustion, and we would catch it. Our bodies evolved to keep moving, long after other species would give up." "That sounds horrifying," Tavrin said honestly. "Yeah," Jaemin agreed, still smiling. "I guess it kind of is." The training continued into the afternoon. Tavrin's squad watched with growing unease. The humans were not stronger than Caltherians. They were not faster, but they simply did not stop. It was like watching machines that never needed to power down. Evening came, and the humans finally finished their training. They were exhausted, covered in dirt and sweat, but they cleaned their weapons and equipment before resting. Discipline and duty came before personal comfort. Always. That night, alarms screamed through the base. Tavrin jerked awake, his warrior instincts immediately alert. His communication device crackled with urgent messages. "All personnel to defensive positions. Vrix raiders approaching from the east. Estimated time to contact: 10 minutes. The Vrix were an insectoid species that plagued the border regions. They attacked settlements to steal supplies and take captives. They were vicious fighters, with hard carapaces and sharp limbs. A Vrix warrior stood 3 meters tall and could tear through light armor with its claws. Tavrin grabbed his weapon and rushed to the command center. The Caltherian squad leader was already there, with Lieutenant So-Ra. Tactical displays showed approximately 40 Vrix raiders approaching the base on foot. "Standard raid pattern," So-Ra said calmly, her voice steady. "They will hit the eastern wall first. Try to breach it quickly. My soldiers are already in position." The Caltherians moved to support the eastern defenses. In the darkness, Tavrin could see human soldiers running to their positions, despite having trained for 14 hours straight. Despite being exhausted, they moved with purpose and speed. No one hesitated. No one complained. The Vrix hit the wall like a wave of kitten and fury. Their screeching filled the night air. The defenders opened fire, energy weapons cutting through the darkness. Several Vrix fell, but more kept coming. They were relentless in their attack, throwing themselves at the defenses again and again. A section of the wall collapsed under concentrated assault. Vrix warriors poured through the gap. Hand-to-hand combat erupted as the defenders fought to push them back. Tavrin found himself face-to-face with a massive Vrix warrior. Its mandibles clacked as it swung a clawed limb at his head. He ducked and returned fire. But the Vrix was fast. Its second limb caught him across the chest, tearing through his armor. Pain exploded through Tavrin's body. He felt his ribs crack from the impact. He fell backwards, his weapon clattering away. The Vrix loomed over him, ready to deliver the killing blow. A human soldier threw himself between them. It was Day One, firing his weapon point-blank into the Vrix's head. The creature shrieked and collapsed. Day One immediately grabbed Tavrin and dragged him toward cover. "Medic!" Day One shouted. "We have wounded here." Jaemin appeared within seconds, his medical kit already open. He began treating Tavrin's injuries with swift, practiced movements. Tavrin gasped in pain, his vision swimming. Around them, the battle continued to rage. Through his pain, Tavrin watched in horror and amazement. A human soldier near him took a Vrix claw strike that severed 3 fingers from his left hand. The soldier looked down at his ruined hand, made a sound of frustration, switched his weapon to his right hand, and kept fighting. just kept fighting. Lieutenant Sora coordinated the defense from an exposed position. Tavrin saw a Vrix warrior strike her leg with a powerful blow. He heard the crack of bone breaking even over the sounds of battle. Sora fell to one knee, and Tavrin thought she would retreat for medical treatment. Instead, she braced herself against a barrier and continued giving orders, her voice never wavering despite the pain that must have been overwhelming. Jae-min finished stabilizing Tavrin, then immediately moved to help another wounded soldier. Tavrin noticed that Jae-min himself was injured. 2 fingers on his right hand were bent at wrong angles, clearly broken. Yet the young medic continued treating the wounded, his face set in concentration, working through the pain as if it was merely an inconvenience. The battle lasted through the night and into the next day. Reinforcements arrived from a nearby human settlement after 16 hours of continuous fighting. By then, the Vrix had been driven off, leaving their dead behind. Tavrin was carried to the medical center. His injuries were serious but not fatal. As he lay on the treatment bed, he watched human medics moving between the wounded. They treated Caltherian and human casualties with equal care, working efficiently despite their own exhaustion and injuries. "How?" Tavrin asked when Day One came to check on him. "How do you keep fighting when you are hurt? When you are exhausted? When your body is breaking?" Day One looked at him with those dark, predator eyes. "Because the fight is not over," he said simply. "Because our friends need us. Because giving up means death, and we are not ready to die yet. But the pain is just information," Day One interrupted. "It tells us something is wrong, but it does not control us. We acknowledge it and keep going anyway. That is what humans do. We endure." Tavrin closed his eyes, processing this. His species felt pain just as intensely as humans did. But when a Caltherian was badly hurt, their body would shut down, forcing rest and recovery. It was a survival mechanism. Humans had somehow bypassed that mechanism. They could override their own body's warnings and continue functioning long past the point where they should have collapsed. It was the most terrifying thing Tavrin had ever learned about any species. Pain and exhaustion were supposed to be limits, biological imperatives that could not be ignored. But humans had evolved to ignore them. They had turned themselves into creatures that simply could not be stopped by normal means. As he drifted toward sleep, aided by medication, one thought kept circulating through Tavrin's mind. What kind of death world produces a species that can fight for 31 hours straight while grievously injured and consider it normal? He was very afraid he would learn the answer to that question. 2 years had passed since the Vrix attack on New Busan. Tavrin now served on a joint Caltherian-human task force operating in the border regions. The alliance had formed out of necessity when a new threat emerged: the Quiveri Dominion, an aggressive empire expanding into both Caltherian and human space. Tavrin had requested the assignment. After witnessing human endurance firsthand, he wanted to understand them better. He served aboard a human vessel called the Incheon's Pride, working alongside human crew members in a tactical analysis role. Over the months, he had made something resembling friends among the humans. They were good people, he had learned. Honorable. Kind. They laughed easily and helped each other, without being asked. But he had also noticed something else. Beneath their friendliness was a carefully controlled core of violence. Humans were always ready for war. Even during peace, their entire culture seemed built around the concept of controlled aggression. They joked about violence constantly, turning horror into humor as a coping mechanism. It unsettled him sometimes, but he had grown used to it. Commander Hyun-woo ran the Incheon's Pride with firm efficiency. He was a veteran of previous conflicts, with gray touching his dark hair. He treated his crew with respect and treated Tavrin as an equal. The communications officer, Ensign Bo-ra, was young and cheerful, always ready with a smile. She reminded Tavrin of the optimistic cadets back on his homeworld. Everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon, Galactic Standard Time. The distress signal came from the colony ship Harmonia's Dream. The ship carried 4,000 civilians, mostly families emigrating to a new human colony world. Men, women, children. They were unarmed and undefended, except for a small security detail. Multiple hostile contacts, the sensor officer reported urgently. Quveri warships. 6 of them. They are attacking the colony ship. Battle stations. I Hyun-woo ordered immediately. All weapons ready. Navigation. Plot. Intercept course. Maximum speed. The crew moved with trained precision. Tavren felt his 3 hearts racing as the warship accelerated toward the combat zone. They were 20 minutes away. He prayed they would arrive in time. They did not arrive in time. When Incheon's Pride reached the coordinates, they found only debris. The colony ship had been completely destroyed. Escape pods floated among the wreckage, some intact, most not. The Quveri warships were already withdrawing toward their own territory. Scan for survivors, Hyun-woo ordered, his voice very quiet. The sensor officer worked frantically. I am detecting life signs in 17 escape pods. Total survivors approximately 300. The rest. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. 300 survivors. Out of 4,000 people. Tavren felt sick. This was a massacre, pure and simple. The Quveri had destroyed an unarmed civilian vessel for no strategic reason. It was murder. He looked around the bridge. The human crew members had gone very still. Their faces showed no expression. It was as if they had become statues carved from stone. The change was sudden and complete. Ensign Bo-ra sat at her communications station, her hands moving across the controls with mechanical precision. When she spoke, her voice sounded different, colder, empty of all emotion. Commander, I am receiving authorization codes from Fleet Command. Wrath Protocol is authorized. Repeat. Wrath Protocol is authorized. Tavren did not understand. What is the Wrath Protocol? No one answered him immediately. Commander Hyun-woo stood and faced his crew. Rescue all survivors. Provide medical care. Get them to safety. He paused. Then we hunt. Hunt? Tavren asked. Should we not report this to Fleet Command and wait for orders? Hyun-woo turned to look at him. His eyes were cold and empty, like looking into deep space. This is the order. The Quveri have crossed a line. They killed our civilians. They killed our children. There is no coming back from that. Over the next hour, the survivors were rescued and treated. Tavren helped where he could, though he was not trained as a medic. He heard the stories from those who survived. The Quveri had targeted the engines first, crippling the ship. Then they had fired on the escape pods as people tried to flee. They had laughed over open communication channels while they murdered helpless civilians. Captain Raxval of the Caltherian support vessel contacted Hyun-woo. Commander, my sensors detect Quveri forces withdrawing to their territory. We should report this incident to our respective commands and organize a proper response. Negative, Hyun-woo replied flatly. We are pursuing immediately. You may accompany us or return to base. Your choice. This is not logical. Raxval protested. We are 2 ships against 6. We should wait for reinforcements. I am not waiting. Tavren watched as the human crew prepared for pursuit. They moved with terrifying efficiency. All the friendliness and warmth completely gone. They had become something else. Something he did not recognize. The chase began. Quveri warships were fast, but they stopped periodically to rest their crews and maintain their systems. Caltherian warships would have done the same. It was standard procedure. Biological beings needed rest. The Incheon's Pride did not stop. Not after 12 hours. Not after 24. The human crew worked in shifts, but the ship itself never slowed down. They pushed the engines beyond recommended limits, accepting the risk of catastrophic failure. Captain Raxval accompanied them for the first 2 days, then had to break off for necessary maintenance and crew rest. Commander Hyun-woo, my crew is exhausted. We must stop. Then stop, Hyunwoo said without emotion. We continue. 3 more human warships joined the pursuit as word spread. Then 5 more. Then 12. Soon, an entire fleet was hunting the Quivari across 3 star systems. They did not stop. They did not slow down. They pushed their ships to the breaking point and kept going. Tavrin had not truly understood human endurance during the Vrix attack. That had been impressive. This was something else entirely. This was not soldiers fighting for a few hours. This was an entire fleet operating at maximum combat readiness for 47 consecutive days. The humans rotated shifts, but they had reduced rest periods to minimal levels. Tavrin watched them grow haggard and exhausted. They stumbled when they walked. Their hands shook from fatigue, but they never stopped. Their eyes remained cold and focused on a single purpose: vengeance. Why? Tavrin asked Bo-Ra during one of her brief rest periods. The Quivari will eventually be caught and punished through proper channels. Bo-Ra looked at him with eyes that seemed much older than her years. They killed our children. Tavrin. They laughed while they did it. There is no proper channel for that. There is only justice. On the 47th day, the human fleet cornered the Quivari warships in an asteroid field. The Quivari had finally stopped running. They probably believed the humans would negotiate or accept surrender. They were wrong. Tavrin was ordered to remain on the bridge during the battle, observing as part of his liaison duties. He watched as the human fleet attacked with coordinated precision. No communication was sent to the Quivari. No surrender was requested. The humans simply opened fire. The battle was brutal and one-sided. The Quivari fought back, but they were facing an enemy that had chased them for over 6 weeks without rest, an enemy that had pushed past exhaustion and fatigue through sheer force of will, an enemy that no longer cared about their own safety. Hyunwoo authorized boarding actions on 2 Quivari vessels that tried to surrender. Tavrin watched through camera feeds as human marines cut through the ships. They moved with mechanical efficiency, giving no quarter. The Quivari crew members tried to surrender. The humans did not accept. It was slaughter. Pure and simple. Tavrin felt sick watching it, but he could not look away. This was what humans became when their mercy was exhausted. This was what they became when you hurt their young. A Quivari commander managed to transmit a final message before his ship was destroyed. You are monsters, he screamed. You are demons. Hyunwoo's response was delivered in that same cold, empty voice. No. We are humans. You should have learned the difference. When it was over, all 6 Quivari warships were destroyed. There were no survivors. The human fleet had taken casualties, but nothing that would stop them. They treated their wounded and prepared to return to friendly space. Tavrin found himself alone in an observation room, staring out at the debris field. He felt numb. He had witnessed the complete annihilation of an enemy force by an implacable foe that simply would not stop. Commander Hyunwoo entered the room. His face showed emotion again. Exhaustion and sadness replacing the cold emptiness. I know what you are thinking, he said quietly. I am thinking that I have seen humans commit acts that would be called war crimes by many species. Tavrin replied, honestly. Yes. Hyunwoo agreed. We are not proud of what happened here, but we will not apologize for it either. The Quivari needed to learn a lesson. The entire galaxy needs to learn a lesson. You do not kill human children. Ever. There are consequences for that. Your mercy is a choice, not a limitation, Tavrin said, remembering something Daewon had once told him. Exactly, Hyunwoo confirmed. We choose to be civilized. We choose to be kind, but never mistake our kindness for weakness. When that choice is taken away from us, when you force us to become something else. He gestured toward the debris field. This is what we really are underneath. Tavrin understood now. Humans were not naturally peaceful. They had simply learned to control their violent nature. But that control had limits. Push them far enough, hurt them deeply enough, and the control would break. What remained was a species that evolution had shaped into perfect killers over millions of years of constant warfare. He would never see humans the same way again. Every smile, every laugh, every act of kindness would always carry the shadow of this knowledge. Humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy precisely because they chose not to be dangerous most of the time. 3 months after the Quaveri incident, Tavren remained aboard the Incheon's Pride. The ship was undergoing repairs at a human naval station, giving the crew time to rest and recover. The exhaustion from their relentless pursuit had taken a toll, and many crew members were only now beginning to look like themselves again. Tavren had requested to stay with the human fleet. He needed to understand them better. The massacre of the Quaveri haunted him, but not because he felt it was unjust. It haunted him because of how efficiently the humans had carried it out, how completely they had transformed from peaceful crew members into instruments of vengeance. He found himself in the officers' mess hall one evening. Captain Sung-ho was there, a veteran officer who had served in human military forces for over 30 years. He was older than most of the crew, with gray hair and a face marked by old scars. He had a reputation for wisdom and fair judgment. Captain Sung-ho, Tavren approached carefully. "May I join you?" "Of course, Tavren. Please, sit." He was eating a simple meal and reading something on a datapad. "What brings you here tonight?" Tavren sat down, his large frame making the human-sized chair uncomfortable. "I want to understand something. I have been thinking about the Quaveri hunt. About what I witnessed. I need to know why humans are the way they are." Sung-ho set down his datapad and gave Tavren his full attention. "That is a large question. You have fought in many wars. You understand human nature." The captain was quiet for a moment, considering his words. "Humans are good at war because we have been doing it for our entire existence. Before we left Earth, we spent thousands of years fighting each other. Every generation, every century, constant warfare. We did not fight for territory or resources alone. We fought over ideas, over gods, over honor. We became very, very good at killing. Other species have wars," Tavren pointed out. "Not like ours," Sung-ho said firmly. "Most species fight until one side clearly wins or loses, then they stop. Humans do not stop. We fight total wars where the goal is complete destruction of the enemy. We invented concepts like scorched earth tactics, where we destroy everything so the enemy gets nothing. We created weapons specifically designed to cause maximum suffering. We studied the art of war like it was a science." A younger officer entered the mess hall. Sergeant Hae-won was a special forces operative, small and compact with alert eyes. She grabbed food and joined their table without asking, which seemed to be common human behavior. "What are we talking about?" she asked. "I am trying to help Tavren understand why humans excel at warfare," Sung-ho explained. "Oh, that is easy," Hae-won said casually. "We are crazy, and we never give up. 7. We are crazy." "It is more complex than that," Sung-ho said with a slight smile. "Is it though?" Hae-won challenged. "Every human culture has stories about impossible last stands and glorious defeats. We teach our children about battles where everyone died but refused to surrender. We celebrate people who fought against overwhelming odds. We make heroes out of soldiers who chose death over defeat." Tavren leaned forward, interested. "Tell me these stories." Hae-won and Sung-ho exchanged glances. Then, Sung-ho began. "There is an ancient story from Earth history called the Battle of Thermopylae. 300 soldiers held a narrow pass against an army of perhaps 100,000 enemies. They knew they would die. They knew no reinforcements were coming. They fought anyway. For 3 days they held that pass, killing thousands. When they finally fell, their sacrifice bought time for their people to prepare defenses. They are still remembered thousands of years later," Hae-won added. "Or the siege of Leningrad," Sung-ho continued. A city was surrounded by enemies for 900 days. 900 days of starvation, cold, and bombardment. Over 1 million civilians died. But the city never surrendered. The people stayed and fought and died rather than give up. Tavren tried to process this. Why would they not evacuate? Why not live to fight another day? Because sometimes the fight is more important than survival, Haywan said. Because some things are worth dying for. Humans understand this instinctively. More crew members joined them as the evening progressed. The conversation shifted to storytelling mode. Humans, Tavren had learned, loved sharing stories. They passed down their history through narratives, making sure each generation knew what came before. A pilot named Quan Su told the story of the Night Witches, female combat pilots from an ancient Earth war. They flew obsolete aircraft on night bombing missions against a superior enemy. Their planes were so slow and primitive that enemy fighters could not engage them properly. They flew hundreds of missions in conditions that should have been impossible. An engineer named Tae Yang shared a story about the Korean War, a conflict from Earth's history. My ancestors are from Korea, he explained. The peninsula was invaded, and the defenders were pushed back to a tiny area around one city. They were outnumbered, outgunned, nearly defeated. But they held. And then they pushed back. The war lasted 3 years. Millions died. The country was destroyed. But they never surrendered. Koreans have a word, Haewon added. Han. It means a deep feeling of sorrow, regret, and determination, all mixed together. It is the feeling of a people who have been invaded countless times but never broken. We remember our history. We remember every invasion, every occupation. We remember, and we endure. Undersar. 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 We had of things that we had to face, and we had to face Klam. Undersar. And the things that we had to face. Undersar. The stories continued into the night. Some were heroic. Some were tragic. But they all shared common themes. Perseverance. Sacrifice. Refusing to accept defeat, even when defeat seemed inevitable. One story particularly disturbed Tavren. It was about something called the Christmas Truce during an Earth war. Enemy soldiers had stopped fighting for one day to celebrate a religious holiday. They met in the middle of the battlefield, shared food and stories, played games together. For one brief moment, they were not enemies but just humans. That sounds beautiful, Tavren said. It was, Sung Ho agreed. And the next day, they went back to trying to kill each other. That war lasted 4 more years. Millions more died. The soldiers who met during the truce probably killed each other in later battles. But why? Tavren could not understand. If they could find common ground, why continue fighting? Because the fight was bigger than individual soldiers, Sung Ho explained. They were fighting for their countries, their families, their ideals. Personal feelings did not matter. Duty mattered. Honor mattered. Victory mattered. So they fought until one side could not fight anymore. Tavren was silent, processing all these stories. Finally, he spoke. Every species has warriors. Every species has soldiers. But humans teach war to your children through stories. You make it part of your cultural identity. You celebrate last stands and impossible victories. You turn defeat into glory. Yes, Sung Ho confirmed. Other species teach their young to survive. We teach ours to win or die trying. It is not always a good thing. We have caused terrible suffering because of this mindset, but it is what we are. The stories shape us, Haewon added. Every human child hears about heroes who never gave up, about soldiers who fought against impossible odds, about people who sacrificed everything for their cause. We grow up believing that determination and willpower can overcome any obstacle. Sometimes it is true. Sometimes it is not. But we believe it anyway. An older crew member, a navigation specialist named Insu, joined the conversation. My grandfather told me something when I was young. He said that every human alive today is descended from survivors. For millions of years, humans who gave up died. Humans who kept fighting. Even when wounded or scared or exhausted, those humans survived. We are the children of the ones who refuse to quit. It is in our blood, in our genes, in our souls. The mess hall had filled with crew members now, all sharing stories and memories. Tavren listened to tales of Earth's history, of wars and conflicts that spanned centuries. He heard about soldiers who continued fighting with terrible wounds, about civilians who resisted occupation for generations, about cultures that were conquered again and again, but always came back. Captain Sung Ho summarized it near the end of the night. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest or the smartest, but we have one advantage that matters more than anything else. We simply do not know how to quit. Pain does not stop us. Fear does not stop us. Exhaustion does not stop us. The only thing that stops a human is death, and sometimes not even that is enough. We are warfare's most refined product, Haewon said quietly. Millions of years of evolution, on a death world, where everything tried to kill us. Thousands of years of human civilization where we fought each other constantly. We learned every possible way to fight. We perfected the art of killing. And then we learned to aim all that capability at external enemies instead of each other. Tavren felt a chill run through his body despite the warm room. He finally understood. Humans were not naturally peaceful. They were naturally violent. But they had become so good at violence that they had learned to control it, to channel it, to use it only when necessary. They had turned their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. The galaxy is fortunate that humans value peace, he said softly. The galaxy is fortunate that we choose to value peace, Sung Ho corrected. Never forget that it is a choice. We make that choice every day. But if someone forces us to choose differently, he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The fate of the Quiveri fleet spoke for itself. As Tavren left the mess hall that night, he carried with him a new understanding of the humans he served alongside. They laughed and joked. They were kind and helpful. They valued friendship and loyalty. But underneath all of that was something ancient and terrible. The accumulated knowledge of a species that had spent its entire existence perfecting the art of war. And the stories they told ensured that knowledge would never be forgotten. Back in the present, standing before the Caltherian Military Academy cadets, Tavren paused in his story. The lecture hall was absolutely silent. Every young soldier hung on his words, their three eyes wide with a mixture of fascination and fear. You must understand, Tavren continued, that everything I have told you so far was just preparation. The Vrix attack showed me human endurance. The Quiveri hunt showed me human wrath. The stories showed me human culture. But I did not truly understand what humans were capable of until the final battle of the Integration Wars. A cadet raised a limb hesitantly. Sir, can humans be defeated? Tavren considered the question carefully. Yes, humans can be defeated, but you will have to kill every single one of them. And I do mean every single one. Because if even one human survives, they will remember. They will come back. And they will make you regret not finishing the job. He gestured for the lights to dim and brought up a star map. The final battle took place here, in the Korvax system. By this point in the war, the Caltherian Human Alliance was fighting against a coalition of species that feared our combined power. We were outnumbered, but holding our own. The memory pulled him back. Tavren could see it clearly, as if it happened yesterday instead of 13 years ago. His unit had been deployed to defend a critical communications relay on a barren moon. The position was strategically vital. If it fell, an entire sector would lose coordination. He was assigned to work with a human platoon led by Lieutenant Ji Woo. Ji Woo was a career soldier, perhaps 30 human years old, with scars on her face and a calm demeanor that reminded Tavren of still water hiding dangerous depths. She ran her platoon with firm discipline and genuine care for her soldiers. They trusted her completely. The moon had no atmosphere and minimal gravity. Both Caltherians and humans wore environmental suits and magnetic boots. The relay station was built into a crater, with defensive positions arranged around the rim. 23 Caltherian soldiers and 34 human soldiers held the position. The enemy attacked at dawn, Galactic Standard Time. Sensor readings showed overwhelming numbers. At least 500 enemy troops, maybe more, from multiple species. They had armor support and heavy weapons. It was a full assault meant to overrun the position quickly. Jiwoo studied the tactical display without emotion. They outnumber us 10 to 1. No reinforcements are available for at least 30 hours. Recommend we prepare for tactical withdrawal. Tavren's squad leader agreed immediately. Yes. We evacuate. Deny the enemy the relay by destroying it. Fall back to secondary positions. Standard procedure. No, Jiwoo said flatly. Everyone turned to look at her. Lieutenant? The Caltherian squad leader asked, confused. If we lose this relay, the entire sector loses communication. Ships will die because they cannot coordinate. Colonies will fall because they cannot call for help. We were sent here to hold this position, and that is what we will do. But we cannot hold against those numbers. The squad leader protested. Jiwoo looked at him with those calm, terrifying eyes. We are not here to survive. We are here to make them pay for every meter. We hold until reinforcements arrive, or we die trying. There is no third option. The Caltherian squad leader started to argue, but Tavren interrupted. She is right. We hold. The battle began badly and got worse. The enemy came in waves, accepting massive casualties to push forward. The defenders fought from prepared positions, making each meter of ground cost the attackers dearly. But there were too many enemies. Slowly, inevitably, the defensive perimeter shrank. 8 hours into the battle, the Caltherian squad leader was killed by artillery fire. Command fell to Tavren. He coordinated with Jiwoo, and together they managed the shrinking defense. They fell back position by position, making the enemy fight for every centimeter. 12 hours, 16 hours, 20 hours. The defenders were exhausted. They had taken heavy casualties. Half the Caltherians were dead or too wounded to fight. The humans had also suffered losses. But they kept fighting with that terrible endurance Tavren had learned to expect. At 23 hours, disaster struck. An enemy artillery shell collapsed part of the crater wall. The explosion caught Jiwoo directly. Tavren saw her lifted and thrown by the blast. She landed badly, her legs twisted at wrong angles. Both were clearly broken, shattered by the impact. 2 human soldiers dragged Jiwoo to cover. She screamed in pain, the first time Tavren had heard her lose composure. The medic rushed over and injected her with something for the pain. Her face went pale, but her eyes remained focused. Lieutenant, you need evacuation, the medic said urgently. No, Jiwoo gasped. Give me a command pad. I can still coordinate from here. They propped her up against a barrier, her broken legs stretched out in front of her. Someone handed her the tactical command pad. Her hands shook as she accessed it, but she began issuing orders immediately. Her voice was strained with pain but clear. Tavren could not believe what he was seeing. Jiwoo could not walk. She could barely move. The pain must have been overwhelming even with medication. Yet she continued to command her platoon, adjusting their positions, coordinating fire support, making tactical decisions. 26 hours. 28 hours. The situation became desperate. They were down to the last defensive position, gathered around the relay station itself. Ammunition was running low. Casualties were mounting. The enemy kept coming. Reinforcements in 1 hour, the communication officer reported. Can we hold for 1 more hour? We will hold, Jiwoo said firmly. Blood had soaked through her uniform from dozens of small wounds, but she refused to be evacuated. The enemy launched a final massive push, throwing everything they had at the remaining defenders. Hand-to-hand combat erupted as they breached the final barriers. Tavren found himself fighting desperately, his weapon empty, using his claws and strength against enemy soldiers. A human soldier named Youngsik fought next to him. Youngsik had taken a hit that had torn open his side. Tavren could see organs through the wound. The man should have been dead. Instead, he wielded a combat blade with his remaining strength, protecting the wounded who could not fight. The combat became a chaotic mess of close-quarters violence. Tavren lost track of time. Everything became survival, moment to moment. He saw humans fighting with injuries that should have been fatal. He saw them shield their comrades with their own bodies. He saw them refuse to fall even when their bodies had clearly reached their limits. Jiwoo never stopped commanding. From her position against the barrier, unable to move, she coordinated the defense through the chaos. Her voice came through the communication system, calm and steady despite the pain and exhaustion. East flank, fall back 3 meters. West flank, hold position. Someone get Youngsik more ammunition. Medic to center position. We have 3 critical wounded. The reinforcements arrived at 27 hours and 14 minutes. 3 human gunships came down from orbit like avenging angels, their weapons cutting through the enemy forces. Troop transports landed, and fresh soldiers poured out, pushing the enemy back. When it was finally over, Tavren collapsed in exhaustion. He looked around at what remained of the defenders. Of the 23 Caltherian soldiers, 5 were still alive, including him. Of the 34 human soldiers, 6 remained. Jiwoo was one of them, still conscious, still refusing evacuation until she confirmed that the relay remained operational. Enemy casualties numbered over 800. The survivors retreated in disarray, their morale broken by the ferocious defense. The relay station stood intact, still broadcasting, still coordinating the sector defenses. Tavren dragged himself over to where Jiwoo waited for medical evacuation. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you push yourselves like this? What drives you?" Jiwoo looked at him with exhausted eyes. "Because someone has to. Because if we give up, people die. Because surrender means defeat. And defeat is not acceptable. We fight because that is what humans do. We endure because giving up is not in our nature. We win or we die. There is nothing else." Those words echoed in Tavren's mind for years afterward. Back in the present, standing before the cadets, Tavren finished his lecture. That was 13 years ago. Lieutenant Jiwoo recovered from her injuries and still serves in the human military. Youngsik survived and returned to combat duty. They are not unique. They are typical. Every human soldier is like this. Ona. The cadets looked shaken. Good. They needed to understand. So let me be very clear, Tavren continued. Never fight humans if you can possibly avoid it. They are not stronger than you. They are not faster. But they will outlast you. They will endure beyond all reasonable limits. And they will never, ever stop. If you must fight them, remember this. Finish it quickly. Never wound a human and expect them to withdraw. A wounded human is more dangerous than a healthy one, because they have nothing left to lose. They will use their last breath to hurt you. And finally, never make humans angry. Never harm their civilians. Never attack their young, because if you do, they will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy. They will sacrifice everything to destroy you. They will not stop. They will not negotiate. And they will not show mercy. He paused, letting the words sink in. Humans have many good qualities. They are honorable, loyal, and value peace, but they are also warfare's most refined product, evolved on a death world over millions of years to be the perfect persistence predators. They have turned killing into an art form and war into a science. They choose to be peaceful, but never mistake that choice for weakness. A cadet raised a limb. Sir, Does the Caltherian Empire fear humans? 1. The Caltherian Empire respects humans, Tavren corrected firmly. That is why we maintain a strong alliance with them. That is why we trade with them, cooperate with them, and learn from them. Because the alternative to having humans as allies is having them as enemies. And no one wants that. That is the lesson, cadets. The most terrifying weapon in the universe is not advanced technology or superior firepower. It is the absolute refusal to accept defeat. And humans have weaponized that refusal more effectively than any species in galactic history. The lecture ended. The cadets filed out quietly, subdued by what they had learned. Tavren gathered his materials and walked to the window. Below, in the Academy's landing area, he saw a shuttle arriving. The diplomatic markings identified it as human. The shuttle door opened, and Ambassador Minseo stepped out. She was young for a diplomat, perhaps 40 human years, dressed in formal attire. She smiled and waved pleasantly at the Caltherian officials who greeted her. She looked completely harmless, friendly, peaceful. Tavren knew better. He had spent years among humans. He knew what lay beneath that pleasant smile. He knew the capacity for violence that every human carried, carefully controlled but always present. He knew the stories they told themselves, the history that shaped them, the refusal to quit that defined them. Ambassador Minseo looked up and saw him watching from the window. She smiled and waved at him too. He raised a limb in greeting, acknowledging her. The Caltherian-human alliance remained strong. Trade flourished. Cultural exchanges continued. Peace had held for over a decade now. Both species benefited from cooperation, but Tavren never forgot the lessons he had learned. He never forgot what humans were capable of when pushed. He never forgot Jiwoo coordinating battle with shattered legs, or the Quiveri fleet burning in space, or the stories of impossible victories told with pride. He made a note to submit a recommendation to the military command. Increase cooperation with human forces. Expand the alliance. Deepen the friendship, not out of fear, but out of respect for what humans represented. Because in a galaxy full of dangers and enemies, having humans on your side was the best possible insurance policy. And Tavren wanted to make absolutely certain that humans remained on the Caltherian side, forever.